Welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on social media at MMALOTN. This week, we're going over the big UFC 275 pay-per-view card straight out of Singapore. We got two title fights on the line for you guys this evening, and it's going to be the light heavyweight title on the line with Glover Teixeira trying to successfully defend his title for the first time against Yuri Prochazka, a very dynamic and powerful striker who's getting the title shot with his third fight in the UFC after devastating his first two opponents, and rightfully so. And then in the co-main event, we got the flyweight women's title on the line with the 125-pound GOAT, Valentina Shevchenko, looking to continue her streak and her reign atop the division, taking on Taila Santos now. Very intrigued to see if this plus 400, plus 450 underdog has anything to, or has what it takes to provide some resistance to Valentina, and even to the point of possibly capturing the title from her as well. Now, for anybody that was watching the show last night, the Propping You Up show on the All-Star, I sincerely apologize for my internet issues. Thankfully, my co-host, or replacement co-host, I should say, John, was able to take over and commandeer the rest of the stream and did a very phenomenal job. I had a pretty stern talk with my service provider and be like, hey, you guys are messing with my work and my livelihood by messing up with my internet connection. Thankfully, they were able to rectify it. Thankfully, I am here. Thankfully, it is in crystal clear quality as well, so we don't have to worry about that moving forward. Secondly, something I wasn't able to do this entire week, especially since this tragic news occurred, I got to give a big RIP to Sidhu Moosewala. Obviously, a lot of you guys know the famous Indian rapper, singer, musician, was tragically gunned down about 2 weeks ago now in India. He initially came to Canada, specifically in my town here in Brampton, as an international student and pursued his music career from there. Blew up within 5 years, gained over 8 million Instagram followers, and just became one of the biggest music stars we've ever had because of his style of lyricism and his ability to mix it with hip hop and trap beats. And it just absolutely took him into a different stratosphere compared to any other Indo-Canadian artist that's ever been out there. And to have him go like that was very tragic, very reminiscent of an artist he was very inspired by, Tupac Shakur, right? That's one guy he would always talk about. And having his last single be The Last Ride and the cover art being the shot up vehicle of Tupac Shakur was very eerie in terms of having art imitate life. And it was very tragic. I'm still blasting his music over the last couple of weeks. It's very difficult to see something like that happen to somebody from my roots, essentially, that was very much getting to that different level and was trying to make some change over there in India as well, due to some of the backwards laws back there as well. But I just wanted to take a moment here to show respect to him. If you guys, I'm sure there's a lot of you that listen to music sometimes, and you listen to other languages, even if you don't understand them, and you just like the vibe of it. I would very much suggest checking out Sidhu Moosewala's work. Very, very good artist, and just gone too soon. 28 years old. So very, very, very tragic there. So I just want to pay my respects live on the stream before we got into the show here. Again, RIP Sidhu Moosewala. Now let's get back to the combat sports that you guys are here for as well. And I got a great guest. Let me bring the mood right back up, because we got a fantastic guest here. I had him on for, I believe, UFC. It was actually earlier this year. I believe it was the Adesanya card, and we had to cut his time short because I was on a bit of a tight schedule that day. Luckily, we got all the time in the world here, and we can break down every fight as best as we can. So before I bring him in here, I do want to let you guys know he is the number one spot in the Lock of the Night Challenge high stakes game, the $500 game. He has an incredible 14-3 record right now. Unfortunately, missed one event, but it doesn't matter because he's still in first place. He has plus 47.55 units with a 53% ROI. Called Tony Gravely at minus 115 this past week. Had a bunch of other sharp plays, and not to mention he's been around the MMA game for longer than you guys. I can guarantee that. This guy's been absolutely killing it. Let me bring in my friend here, Mr. Mike Constantino. Mike, how are you doing,
my brother? Good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. And I see that I got you in your studio area. I believe last time you were out in Atlantic City, if I'm not mistaken, in your hotel room, right?
Yeah, I'm in my office today. And last time, you're right, there was a New Jersey State Wrestling tournament down in Atlantic City, and I was down there for that, and I did it from a hotel room on a phone. But really happy to be back.
Absolutely. There was a great reception in terms of your analysis that night. I think you killed it with all the bets that you actually gave out on my show that week, and we're expecting the same here. But before we get into the breaking down of it from a gambler's perspective, as a fan, you know, I mean, as a guy that's been around the sport for as long as you have, what are your thoughts on this card? And is there a specific fight that sticks out to you from a fan's perspective that you're like, ooh, I don't care about the money that I got on this fight. I just can't wait to see it play out.
You know what? I feel that way about a lot of fights. I mean, every weekend, take you a little inside my head. I like to take a snapshot. When I first look at a card, I try not to look at it until after an event ends. So, like on Sunday, as I'm leisuring, and the things that I look at first, keeping in mind my experience in the game that you touched on. I negotiated a lot of contracts as a sports agent for fighters, as well as coaching and cornering. So I know one of the most valuable real estate spots, you obviously have the main event and then the co-main event, but it's that opening fight on pay-per-view, which is gold. There's
Yeah.
no, coincidence that Sugar Sean opens up the Conor McGregor pay-per-views. And then right before that, you have the last fight, let's say the lead-in fight. So that's all prime real estate. So I like to see who the UFC initially puts in those spots. And something that jumped out at me when you're asking what am I looking forward to is that Della Maddalena fight.
Ooh.
Because if I'm Dana White and Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby and all the higher powers, am I going to say I want to put in Emeev, who's got 7 decisions in his last 7 fights, coming off 2 split decisions and a loss to Danny Roberts? Or am I saying, hey, man, I want to showcase Maddalena here, who has all these knockouts. He's finished in both of his losses. You got to think about the business end of it. So that jumped right out at me. So I'm excited for that fight because I want to see if my theory, and one of the angles that I do look for and like plays out, So we'll get to that fight. But that's what I like to do when I first look at the cards, and that jumped out at me.
Yeah, when I was studying for Jack for his UFC debut, I was like, man, this is fun, right? Usually when we're doing tape study, there's some fighters where you're like, like I gotta slug through some of this tape, and there's a lot of guys that are just not the most enthralling to watch on the regional scene. But Jack, man, like win, lose, or draw, or even just him in bad positions, he always makes it entertaining. He's always like, pretty much all offensive. We'll obviously talk about it a little bit more once we get to his fight here, but yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from. Having him as a curtain jerker for the pay-per-view, not to mention against the toughest test he's going up against now too. It will really be a big show me spot for a lot of people, and even for Dana White to be like, okay, maybe this kid does have what it takes to maybe be our next big star from down under, and he has the entertaining style to back that up as well. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So Mike, without further ado, let's get into the card. We did lose one earlier today. Obviously, Rogerio Bontorin notoriously has issues making 125 pounds. He didn't even make it to the scale this time. He had to pull out. Poor Manel Cap having to travel to that side of the world to fight, but now he's not fighting. He's sitting on the sidelines, isn't going to be enjoying it as a fan. Thus, Jake Matthews and Andre Fialho has now been pushed up to the main card. I believe that was the 3rd or 4th fight on the prelims, but I think they did a great job in terms of pushing that up to the main card, especially with the streak Andre Fialho is currently on right now, and it seems to be capturing a lot of people's eyes, and especially Dana White as well. So starting off the prelim card here, we got a women's featherweight fight between Jocelyn Edwards and Ramona Pascual. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus, it looks like the odds are not up here for some reason, but I believe we had Jocelyn Edwards as a minus 170 favorite. And we currently have, there we go. Minus 165 for Jocelyn Edwards, plus 145 the return on Ramona Pascual. Now, originally, this fight was scheduled to be 135 pounds. From what I heard on the weigh-in show is a week or 2, maybe even 3 weeks ago, Ramona Pascual asked for this fight to be moved up to 145 pounds. Not a good look. You know what I mean? How often do we ever see that happen, Mike? Like, I don't think I've ever heard that happen a couple weeks before the fight, them asking for this fight to be pushed up. Luckily for Jocelyn Edwards, she gets a little extra money in the bank account here, takes a little bit of a percentage from Ramona, but this fight does go on as a 145-pound bout. Interesting fight here, right? A lot of people were on the Romana Medov train last time around when she went up against Josia Nunes in her UFC debut on short notice, thinking that the wrestling was going to be enough to stop the Brazilian bruiser Josia Nunes. But Pascual, even when she got the takedowns, was able to do nothing with it, literally just lying on top of her opponent, trying to control that position, even with Nunes landing some shots off of her back there. Pascual, that's kind of her game, right? She wants to drag fights to the ground and have some success there. You see her going up against like very bad competition on the regional scene, and that's where she's able to get some of her finishes. But as she's going to start taking steps up in competition, it's going to get harder and harder for her to come by those finishes. Here with Jocelyn Edwards, not the greatest takedown defense, and we've seen that exaggerated in her last two fights here against Jessica Rose Clark, and then the fight before that between against Carol Hosa. But I don't know if it's going to have that much of an issue in this fight against Pascual. Pascual will likely land takedowns, but I think that her inactivity from on top, mixed in with the offensive nature of Edwards off of her back, is going to make it hard for Pascual to get any points off, get much damage off. And I do think it's actually going to lead to, Edwards kind of gassing out Pascual here and then eventually finding her in a submission of some sort. So the two spots that I've been looking at here is the Edwards inside the distance or even the under 2.5. Women's MMA, a lot of people don't really like the violence bets there, but I feel like the way that these two match up here, we could get some violence. I think that Edwards is the much better striker, and I do think that once this fight hits the mat, even with her on her back, she should be able to put up some submissions and possibly catch Pascual in something here, and maybe even get a late finish as well for Edwards. So rather than the under 2.5, maybe the fight doesn't go to decision just to get those extra 2.5 minutes. Pick is going to be Edwards, but I will likely have some money on the fight doesn't go to decision, which currently sits at plus 145, plus 150. What are your thoughts about this matchup?
Tough couple of fights to start my
let's go.
It's one of those things, right? So for me personally, I bet and I also play DFS, but I exclusively only play the DraftKings contest. So I will touch on both of those today, but for DFS purposes, I really don't play FanDuel, so it's hard for me to speak on it. But I look at my money going into an event, how I'm going to get it in, just like a poker hand. You want to get it in with the best. So some fights I'll bet, and some I'll just gain my exposure through, my DFS lineups. So if I wanted to bet, say, $100 on this fighter, $1,000, I might enter lineups with these fighters. I don't think I'm going to arrive at a bet. I don't have a bet on this right now. But if I did, I would have to lean to the underdog here, Mempreet. And let's talk through it. And it's good that on this first fight, we offer, different views. First off, the fight at 145. To me, that's a big difference. I don't know why Edwards is going up. You brought a wrinkle in that I wasn't aware of, that it was a couple weeks out. But as far as I've known about this fight, it was at 145. And I questioned initially, why is she even doing that? Now, secondarily, Pascual fought Nunes. Now, let's say right off the bat, we could all agree that Joanna Nunes is a terror with that punch. And she's like a vicious little knockout artist. So Pascual, who took that fight on short notice, survive that. That right off the bat, I don't think Edwards has to offer on the level of power of Nunes. Maybe she's a little better technically kickboxer from the outside, but if Pascual survived the power of Nunes, I think she'll not get knocked out by Edwards. So let's just say that. So then now if that narrows it down to the grappling, you have Pascual, who took 3 takedowns. She got on Nunes, short notice. Now she's going to be the much bigger fighter here and wider and more physical, in my opinion. And she's going up against Edwards, who's, she gave up 5 takedowns to Jessie Jess, who I love, but she's more of a Muay Thai fighter. She gave up 4 takedowns to Carol Rosa, even one to Wu Yanan. She's been taken down in every fight. I think it's inevitable that this fight will get to the ground. Now, yes, Edwards is more active off her back. She can, go for submissions off her back. But how many times did we see a fighter who doesn't succeed in that area win the fight for attempts of submissions from their back? So I think that this fight personally is going to be rinse and repeat takedowns. And then it's going to be a matter of, can Pascual control her there for large periods of time and or hunt for the finish. So if I had a bet, I would take the 140, 145 on Pascual due to what I said, that I think she's going to get the fight to the ground and avoid being knocked out. And, I think she'll be smart enough and square enough to not get finished. She trains every day with Joanna Wood now, or Calderon. She's with a good camp, with John Wood. She's trained now in a full fight camp for this fight. I think that we're going to see a better performance out of Pascual here. So And for DraftKings purposes, I mean, she's 7,500, 1,200 cheaper, than Edwards. So I'm going to wind up with much more Pascual than Edwards. And I'll probably play Edwards in like a GPP lineup.
I love it. I love the dissent right off the bat here, but that's what the people want, right? They want to hear both sides of the argument here, and I feel like you presented a pretty damn good argument as well. Let's see how it plays out. With that said, though, I'm not the most keen on playing Edwards at chalk here at -165, right? I would rather her close to a pick'em line, maybe even as an underdog, especially considering what you just laid out, right? Pascual is going to land takedowns. She will likely have most of the control time here. It's just, can she stay out of danger if Edwards is going to be offensive off of her back? So we'll see how that plays out. All right, let us move on. Sorry, before we even get on to the next one, it's so surreal to me, Mike, just seeing you sit there and just knowing our history in a sense, right? Like just seeing each other at a UFC event years and years ago, and then seeing you at another one, and then you recognizing me, and then us being on the show here together. It's just so surreal to me how long I've even been in the game. I behind the scenes, it's been around 11 years now for me behind the game. I've been a fan for MMA over 15 years now, and then just seeing us talk like this about MMA, it's just, I don't know, it's giving me goosebumps a little bit. I know you've been around the game for a while, but I'm truly appreciative that you're on here with it.
You're a good guy. You know what? Energy attracts like energy, and that's why we're here, and that's why we met the first time. And we're trucking along.
Exactly.
You're a good guy.
Thank you, brother. All right, let's move on to the next one here. We got a women's strawweight bout. We got Silvana Gomez Juarez going up against Liang. In terms of odds, we're looking at -135 on Gomez Juarez and +115 on the Chinese fighter Liang. I'll let you kick this one off, Mike. What do you think about this women's strawweight bout?
I already have a bet in on this fight, and I just came from the Stay Cashin show, which is the company that I'm exclusively with for Deep Bets, where I get my picks and everything. And I have a special treat for our listeners at the end. But I gave a pick on this fight, and it gets back down initially, even to the business of it for me. I mean, some things to me just like jump out. And one thing that I always had a hard time for is like when you train a fighter and everything's checked off and the fighter loses. And I remember my father told me once, you can't get in the ring and fight for them, right? You could do everything that you can. And it sets up similarly here for me. Like on one hand, you have the Dragon Girl, all energy all the time, exciting, but she gasses, but she gets submissions and blah, 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 blah. Now you got to fight near China for the Dragon Girl, who comes out of the gate strong, had 3 takedowns in her fight, has a history of submissions, especially arm bars, almost like a little Jojua here. And you're going to put her in a fight. Now let's look at our roster and see who we're going to match her up with. Wow. Okay. Well, for the 25-year-old exciting Dragon Girl in the art of China, let's give her, a 37-year-old, in my opinion, one-dimensional boxer who's 0-2 in the UFC with 2 first-round armbar losses. Hey, well, what the hell does that scream to you, right? Now, of course, a fight is a fight, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is a great matchup for the Dragon Girl. Come out here, get the takedown. The girl's got submitted twice in arm bars. What more can you ask for, right? We can't go in the cage and fight for her. Oh, wait, I could ask for one more thing. You're going to give me her as an underdog? Great. Okay, so +115. But then when you peel back the layers of the onion, is Dragon Girl, who has cardio issues, going to come in here and outbox the boxer? No, probably not, right? And is she going to win a decision? Well, she has cardio problems, maybe, but less likely. So what's the most likely path to victory? A submission, right? So give me 215. So I already bet this. I took, I think it was on DraftKings, Dragon Girl here +215 by submission. Now, if I lose the bet, I lose the bet, right? But it either means she's going to get knocked out, in my opinion, or maybe she wins a decision. I doubt it, but I'll have a bunch of her in DraftKings too. So I'm going to be live all over if she wins, but I just don't think you can get a better matchup than, a 37-year-old one-dimensional fighter who lost their last 2 fights via armbar. If you have, the intangibles, like I mentioned, for Dragon Girl. So interested to hear your take, but I do have a bet on that already, +215 by sub.
I think you broke it down better than I could, man. I'm pretty much right there with you as well. I haven't made the bet myself, but I likely will be just taking some Liang straight up there. The submission prop seems to be down to +150 at this point in time. Not too far off from what our money line is currently at.
I just put it in before I got on the show. There's no way.
I'm gonna have to look at I'm just looking at best fight odds right now, and on DraftKings they actually don't have it listed. They only have the bet online one, and it's currently sitting at +140.
Oh, okay.
Maybe once I hop onto FanDuel or something.
I'm looking at it.
There we go.
Yeah,
I'll probably put that
the
in.
best fight odds are all screwed up. If you noticed, it's
I
chopped
know.
up.
Fightodds.io is probably the best way to go now.
Yeah.
But it's just been the habit for me to keep going back to best fight odds. Either way, no, I like what you're saying here. I do have to slightly defend myself because I actually did choose Silva Gomez Juarez in her UFC debut against Lupita Godinez with no idea how good Godinez's grappling actually was, because all the tape that I was running of her on the regional scene was her just boxing, her going out there and outboxing boxers as well. And I thought that Gomez Juarez had a pretty good striking game from what I saw on the regional scene. I thought that would translate to the UFC. And then Godinez is like, you forgot that I had wrestling? You forgot that I had grappling? I didn't know you had grappling, girl. And I'll look at what she's doing recently. So, I slightly have to defend myself for that poor take in her UFC debut. But yeah, I'm kind of going off of that now. Liang, as sloppy, as messy as her grappling looks, that's what you want from somebody who's very offensive minded, right? They don't care about getting hit. They just move forward. They look for the takedown and they get it almost immediately, just as she did in her debut against Ariane Carnelossi. Like within the first 10 to 15 seconds, she had that fight on the ground. If she can do the same thing here against Gomez, she should be able to wrap this fight up pretty quickly. Now, I find the totals to be quite interesting here, right? The under 1.5 currently sits at plus 110. The fight doesn't go to decision, sits at minus 325. So like another 7.5 minutes, the odds get drastically skewed. I think a lot of people think that Liang, if she doesn't get that finish in the first round and a half, Gomez will be able to pepper her and eventually finish her later on in this fight, which is why I like to highlight the Gomez via round 3. That's currently sitting at plus 950. Usually you see 4 digits for like third round finishes. So people know that Liang's cardio is definitely not the greatest here. So not a bad hedge there. If you guys, do like the Gomez side, she's likely going to be dealing with a hellacious grappling onslaught early here. But if Liang is not able to get that submission, it's going to fall off and we'll see Gomez really take advantage of that. But just like Mike, I'm on the Liang side here. I usually favor the grappler more often than not, and I think that we're going to see it here. Her game might be sloppy, but she'll be able to get those submission opportunities, and I think at least one of them is going to stick within that first round. So give me Liang money line, and even what's Liang round 1 is plus 200. So I wouldn't mind just taking that.
If I can on DraftKings, it's plus 315 specifically to win by submission.
Yeah, look at that. There you guys go. If you guys have access to DraftKings, that's where you got to do it. They just opened up here in Ontario, so I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of that once we get off this stream.
I want to add one more thing here before you bounce too.
Yeah, go for it.
And I thought of something for the previous fight. I don't want to revisit the previous fight,
no worries.
It's also more of a grappler versus striker in that Pascual Edwards fight, and I love the fact that you're getting the bigger grappler side, than the striker side too. So I think that Pascual being the bigger grappler is also another edge there. I just wanted to revisit that. But then on this fight, the weight cutting is hard and it sucks as it is for everybody. But also keep in mind that I don't know, what do you call her? Liang Na or Na Liang? What do you say?
Let's go with Na.
Na, don't forget in the fight that she gassed, even though she has gassed previously on the regional promotion, which is sketchy, but she had to fly to Jacksonville. For that fight. When you fly for the first time fighting the UFC, and then you're flying and cutting weight, things happen, right? Now, this is a lot closer to China. She has the second fight now in the UFC. She went through that whole process. So, Manpreet, when you remember when Bert was there, I mean, you get off that plane on Tuesday, you're in their hands from Tuesday, till Sunday. So, like, that's an experience as a whole. Like, so she went through that already. Now, closer to home, that could factor into the weight cut too. So that led me also to the bet on Na here. And also keep in mind, if we lose, it's a min loss. It's a 1 min loss. So that's the value to me, is taking the 210. So I see somebody in chat wrote, and everybody thinks it's going to be an armbar. No, I mean, you're betting on odds, right? Like, of course, anybody can lose any fight. But if I could have a min loss versus a plus 2.15 unit win, for the factors, you got to bet the edges, right? Yeah. So that's how I arrived there. Even if I'm wrong, min loss.
No, I love your explanation there, and I absolutely agree. Just because we see the armbar losses doesn't mean that's the only way that she's going to win. She has a great jiu-jitsu game all around. She doesn't need your arm. She could grab your neck if she needs to. And she exactly. She can get some TKOs from on top as well. And I'm glad that you highlighted the striker versus grappler thing, because I was actually counting yesterday through the entire card how many striker versus grappler matchups we have, and there's at least 7 or 8 on this card. So it depends on which which matchups you actually want to take the shot on.
Good lead in to the next fight.
Yeah. Exactly. Perfect lead into the next one here. So we'll get into that with Dana Batgerel going up against Kang Kang. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus 135 for, I believe his name is the Mongolian. No, that is Arichi Liang. Regardless, he is Mongolian then. Storm, he's Mongolian still though. But Storm, Dana Batgerel going up against Kang Kang, Mr. Perfect, minus 135 for the Mongolian, plus 115 for Kang. In the past, I've been a big Kang fan, man. I like his grappling style. It's smothering. He's great in scrambles. I plead with anybody who has not seen his fight with Michinori Tanaka, go back and watch that fight. One of the best grappling matchups you'll see in the UFC to date. Reversal after reversal, submission attempts. It was just one of the best fights I've ever seen from a grappler's perspective. But as his career has gone on, it started to get harder and harder for him to implement that. And I think that's where it's ultimately going to be the downfall for him here. Initially, I was leaning towards Kang. I did the research last night, and I got to say, I'm more so on the Dana Batgerel side here. As long as he can keep this fight in the standing position, he should be able to really touch up Kang on the feet. And I think he could maybe even knock him out later on in this fight. So I'm going to go with Batgerel. Another spot that I'm thinking about, I just don't know if I'm going to pull the trigger. It doesn't even seem like Best Fight Odds has the odds here. Maybe you can let me know, Mike. The violence bet here, the under 2.5, the fight doesn't go to decision. I do think there are finishing opportunities for both guys here, but I do think ultimately it'll be Batgerel finding that chin of Kang and putting him out here. What are your thoughts on this one? And you know what? I'll just pull up my FanDuel as well and get those odds, but continue on.
FanDuel's lacking. They don't have the props up on FanDuel yet.
Oh my God.
For
What's going on? It's a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on. It's actually pretty weird that they don't. But you know, I'm looking at FanDuel, the line on the fight itself. Obviously, you have Kang as a small dog. I mean, this is a tough fight for me because I do like and respect the knockout power of Dana. But again, when you go back and look, you know, at who he fought, I mean, he lost, you know, his first fight to Haile Alatang, who's decent, but, you know, knocked out Guido Canetti, knocked out Not Vidad, who I'm not really that high on. I know a lot of people are. I mean, Brandon Davis is like that middle of the road fighter that, you know, is a common opponent to both. And then he lost, you know, to the first, like, in your face Chris Gutierrez, you know, leg kicks and power striker. I think Kang brings like an interesting dynamic here that, yeah, he can strike a little bit, but, you know, that smothering wrestling game, I think he's going to be the much larger fighter here too, because he seems to suck out on the weight cut and then, you know, put on a lot of size. He has the experience, but also on the flip side of that too. I mean, you know, he lost to Ronnie Yaya, lost to Ricardo Ramos, but no great wins. It's a tough fight for me. I have no bet on it right now, and I lean the Kang side, but, you know, no real conviction on it. You know, kind of like a pass for me right now.
Under 2.5 currently sits at plus 100 according to DraftKings. I'm assuming the fight doesn't go to decision would mean I can't see it here, but I'm assuming minus 120-ish or something is what you'll get on that. Yeah, I'm feeling violence more than anything on this fight. Money line side, again, it's very tough. Like, one of the weakest parts of my games, looking back at my track record, is picking slight favorites. That is like the bane of my existence. I do very good on big favorites. I do very good on slight underdogs. But whenever I pull the trigger on a slight favorite, I always end up shitting the bed there. So it's kind of scary for me to actually put the money out here on Dana Batgerel. If I'm not mistaken, he was a slight favorite against Chris Gutierrez in his last fight. And I believe I did pull the trigger that night and ended up paying for it, as he did end up losing that fight. So, yeah, I'll lean with Batgerel here as the pick. But I'll likely have some action on the under 2.5, man. I do think both guys have tremendous finishing upside. The submission prowess of Kang, or obviously the knockout power of Dana Batgerel. It'll be interesting to see which guy has the edge here, the striker or the grappler, who can keep it in their realm, and whoever can keep it in their realm, I think will likely get the finish here. So I'm going to go Batgerel. In terms of an official prediction from you, Mike, though, what do you think here?
For an official prediction, I'm going to take right now what's to plus 110 with Kang, and it's almost like a show me fight for both. And, you know, as a bettor, you know, and a DFS player, like I always have exposure to every fight in one form or not. So in this fight, I think I'm going to get, you know, a lot of Kang exposure and, like, you know, Probably more lineups than Dana, and then use the Dana side in like my GPP builds. And, I'm not sure if you dabble that much into the DFS, but a GPP is like, a binary outcome, right? He's either going to get like a knockout and score a lot, or he could lose the fight. So it's like more of a higher risk lineup. So I'll put him in like bundles, the Dana side, and like my GPP higher risk, all or nothing type lineups, and probably Kang in like the safer builds where I'm looking to get some points with takedowns, and he also has the win equity upside. So as of now, I don't have a bet, and I probably won't. But if my official pick is Kang plus the 110, I'll take the dog until Dana shows me.
Yeah, unfortunately, up here in Ontario and Canada, they just recently got rid of daily fantasy, so we're not able to play any DFS, DraftKings, or anything up here. It is strictly wagering. With straight bets, parlays, all that type of stuff. It was kind of bittersweet for us. They got rid of daily fantasy, but they added all these new sports books to us: the FanDuels, the DraftKings, the point bets. All those books are now available to us. But we did lose daily fantasy, which is something I hope we eventually get back, because I love that style of betting too, man. Like, it is a completely different spectrum compared to just picking a fighter. So hopefully, fingers crossed, one day Ontario will lighten up and be like, hey, you know what? We already had it. Why don't we just bring it back? All right, let us move on to the next fight here. Very intrigued to hear your thoughts here. We got a middleweight bout between Brendan Allen and Jacob Malkoun. In terms of odds, we are currently looking at minus 320 on Brendan Allen and plus 250 for the ever underrated and disrespected Jacob Malkoun. Mike, I'm going to let you kick this one off, man. For me personally, I'll tee it up to you like this. I don't get why Brendan Allen is always this crazy big favorite. He should win fights. The Kyle Dawkins fight, the Sam Alvey fight, all these fights where he's the giant favorite. Chris Curtis, he ends up shitting the bed there. He's always the big favorite. What's the deal? Well, do you think he deserves to be the big favorite here? And ultimately, who do you think wins?
To answer your question first, no, I don't think he deserves to be that big of a favorite. And, I have a weird thing with Brendan Allen too, right? Like, started with the Strickland fight. Like, I knew Strickland was the better fighter, but Brendan Allen, like, has this thing where he's good everywhere, which he is, he's got good on the ground, but I mean, I'm not sold yet, especially to be, a minus 330, 340 favorite here. I love a wrestler. I'm a sucker for a wrestler. I love a good wrestler. If I can take somebody and put them on their back and hold them there and grind on them and sweat and drip blood and shit in their face, I want that guy rather than the kickboxer, say all day. So it's an interesting dynamic here that Brendan Allen's not a kickboxer per se, right? Is better probably on the ground, I would say, than he is on the feet, for his personal skill set. I think he's going to hold a distinct advantage on the feet here, right? And he's probably the better submission grappler of the two, but I would have to say that Malkoun's probably the better pure wrestler of the two and the better MMA wrestler of the two, the guy that's going to grind you. And I'm having a hard time thinking that I'm not going to bet the Malkoun side. I mean, just because of the value, again, plus 240. I mean, here's a guy who's getting 8 takedowns, 6 takedowns. But the X factor is they were against strikers, right? So now he's going against a guy who's capable on the ground. So it's an interesting fight for me. I don't have a bet on it yet. But, that loss against Curtis for me hurt, right? And, yeah, he should go in there and submit Sam Alvey. And he should go in there and beat Carl Roberson, the kickboxer. And rightfully so, he should have lost to Strickland. Strickland's like, a caveman animal. I respect the skill set. But Malkoun, man, he lost. He got starched by Hawes in his debut, and he came back. I was on him in both of those, next 2 fights. So I think the value lies with Malkoun for sure. Don't have an official bet on it. But if I had to give you like a lean right now, I'm going to have a ton of Malkoun in DraftKings, again, with the price and the way he scores with the takedowns. And I'd have to, if I had to pick one or the other, put one unit to win 2.5 on Malkoun, then risk 3.3 to win one on, Allen as of now.
Yeah, I kind of lean with you. My prediction is going to be Brendan Allen because I think he's the better complete fighter here. But from a gambling perspective, and when you're talking about percentages and all that, there's no way he should be up in the minus 300 range, right? This is a legitimate opponent for him. Jacob Malkoun is a legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player, and I think we're going to see that once this fight hits the mat. It depends on if Brendan Allen wants to take it there, though, right? Like, is he going to willingly engage in the grappling? Is he going to...
I don't think he's going to have a choice.
Yeah.
I think that Malkoun's going to be on him like stink on shit. Yeah. And Allen can either have to defend it or try to reverse it or initiate it, because I don't see a scenario where Malkoun's going to come out and decide he's going to be a point kickboxer, right? I mean, he might throw a little hands and feet and then close the distance, but ultimately he's going to look to grind on him, get his head under his chin, push him up against the cage and take him down, or try to get a takedown and open, mat area. And it's going to come down to the offensive grappling of Allen. And Malkoun, as good grappler, should be, in my opinion, safer on the ground. But we're going to say it's going to be a good fight because, like I said, he's fought strikers thus far, and he should get 6 and 8 takedowns against them.
My favorite play actually out of anything here is actually the over 2.5 at plus 110. I do think that this will be a back and forth grappling affair. I don't think either guy will actually lock up that legitimate submission here. I do think it'll be a grinding affair, kind of like what you were talking about. And shout out to my guy at the 90s in the comment section here saying Malkoun by decision at plus 900. Not too bad of a spot there either, especially considering how I see it playing out as well. Again, my prediction is going to be Brendan Allen. I do think he'll get the better, probably the more damage off here, and likely will sway closer to the judges. But if Malkoun is able to get that top position and keep that top position for, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, likely he could end up getting the decision here as well. So rather than picking a side, I'm just going to take the total here, over 2.5 at plus money. I like it. I could absolutely see it here. So prediction, Allen, best bet in my opinion, over 2.5 plus 110. I might even sprinkle that decision that my guy, the 90s just put out here, plus 900. That's not.
I do like that. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on too before we bump. I'm sorry, these things.
Hey, dude, we got all the time this time. Mike, lay it on me, brother.
All right. Well, the other thing, like I said, Malkoun's fought the strikers, so he should have wrestled. But if you look at even Brendan Allen's history, right, I would say he's a well-rounded fighter. Would you agree with that? He can strike, he can grapple, he can do a little of everything. But if you look at his history, when he fought a pure grappler, which was Kyle Daukaus, even though he lost, took him down 3 times, right? Yeah. And then you don't really see Brendan Allen offensively wrestle, but he did against Kevin Holland, right? Yeah. That's the game plan that he should have done against them. So he's okay when he can control the wrestling. Because in the other fights where there's no takedowns either way, but what's going to happen when he can't control whether the fight takes place on the feet or on the ground? And that's what I think that Malkoun's going to bring here, because I would say that Brendan Allen, as far as a striker, is below, Razak Al Hassan, or maybe even the power of AJ Dobson. So it's going to be interesting because I believe that he's going to be put in a position that he hasn't in a long time, because Sam Alvey wasn't looking to take him down 10 times. You know what I mean? Curtis wasn't looking to take him down 10 times. Soriano wasn't looking to take him down 10 times. Neither was the kickboxer Roberson, who he took down. So now he's going to be more of a defensive. I always like, action instead of reaction, in a fight, especially. So here, I think that the action is going to be initiated, at least from the onstart, by Malkoun, so something to look for.
You're talking me onto a Malkoun bet here, Mike. I'm just saying.
I didn't get that far.
You made some good points.
But, you got to lay it all on the table, per se, right?
For sure. The first thing I said, even before I teed this up to you, right, was Brendan Allen, why is he such a big favorite? That doesn't make sense to me. He should win, don't get me wrong, but I think he should be closer in the ballpark of minus 150, maybe minus 160, not minus 300. Makes no sense to me, but we'll see how it plays out come the fights tomorrow night. All right, let us move on to the next fight here. We got a lightweight fight between Mahashate going up against Steve Garcia. In terms of odds, we got minus 180 on Steve Garcia, plus 155 on Mahashate. Mike, I'll let you kick this one off, brother. What do you like
Thanks.
Here?
Thanks.
Lay it on us. What do you got?
I don't really have anything that I like, and I'm going to run and go out of my way to play, but I'll just take you through my thought process of, what I see when I look at the fight, right? So, like I mentioned, I'm not in a rush to go bet it, but I end up favoring the Garcia side. So again, as a pick, my pick is Garcia. But one of the things I look at is Garcia's reminds me of more of a dog. He can scrap. He's got 9 knockouts. He has had takedowns in UFC fights, and his only career loss inside the distance was a submission. And on the other hand, when I say I'm only looking at what I see, I don't know much about Hayasir, but what I see is 9 total fights. 4 only inside the distance, only, 3 by knockout, right? And if you look at his opponents, I mean, they're horrific prior to the UFC. And I know what Garcia is, where I don't know, what Hayasar is per se. And I just look at the intangibles, and he's not knocking out the cans, and Garcia's tough and he can wrestle. So I think that Garcia's going to hold the grappling edge if he doesn't like what's going on the feet. And he also has the edge of having, previous UFC fights, even though he's 1-1. I mean, he had, again, went through that circus. Hayasar has the Contender Series fight, which is an interesting thing in itself in that environment.
And he was a plus 500 underdog in that fight.
Yeah, no, and it's a good story and blah, blah, blah. But give me Garcia here. I don't have a bet on him, but I think he should win. And I think the line might even be a little low here for somebody who has the 2 fights UFC experience, 9 knockouts, and the ability to wrestle.
Yeah, I'm likely going to be on your side here with Garcia as well, but I just can't pull the trigger on the relatively unknown Mahashate. Like, where a lot of the tape that we have on him is just his 2 or 3 fights, right? One of those fights he just got grinding out by a Russian, and then the other fight he got pulled off that upset victory on the Contender Series. There's just not a lot out there. From what we see, he seems to be a solid striker with some good power, but this kid's still very young. If I'm not mistaken, he's only 22 years old. Steve Garcia has that veteran ability about him. This guy's been all over the place. I believe he's fought in Bellator as well, if I'm not mistaken, but he has that grappling edge here, which will likely be the difference maker, that if he doesn't like what's happening on the feet, he'll likely be able to take this fight to the ground and kind of control him there. I see a lot of people giving Garcia shit because he got rocked by Charlie Ontiveros in a prior UFC fight. The public perception on Charlie Ontiveros is not the greatest at this moment in time, and I completely understand after running the tape and all that, but we got to give some credit to Charlie, as he is a very explosive and powerful striker. That's how he's been able to get those wins that he's already gotten on his record, and that's how he made it to the UFC, because if his striking is working in a fight, more than likely he's able to knock his opponents out. He almost knocked out Steve Garcia, but was not able to, and then eventually succumbed to the grappling onslaught of Steve Garcia. I could see the same thing happening here. Mahashate might have early success with his striking, but once Steve Garcia starts getting those wrestling shoes on, I think it's going to get harder and harder for Mahashate to keep this fight upright and keep it in a realm that he's going to be successful in. So, I'll be on the Steve Garcia side as well. Probably no bet for me. Again, this is a fight where I kind of just wish it fell through. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of wish we kept the Cop and Bontarine fight, and this fight was just like, whatever. Well, we don't need this one anymore. But I'll probably still throw in a lottery parlay or something like that just for the fucking.
And also, don't sleep on the fact that Steve Garcia is the only one to ever beat Ronnie Lawrence, and I respect the hell out of Ronnie Lawrence. So he not only didn't fight in Bellator, he gave Ronnie Lawrence his only loss. And don't dismiss the fact, too, when you go look at the previous competition for Hayasar. I mean, even the guy he fought previous to the Contender Series fight is like 1-3. Yeah. And the more you look at it, 1-5, 1-3. So, I mean, this guy's fighting Ronnie Lawrence in Bellator prior to going to the UFC. And in my opinion, he's the better wrestler. And then if you look even at this upset fight that this kid had on the Contender Series, he won a unanimous decision. I don't even know how to say his name. What is it? Hayasar. But, I mean, he threw 49 strikes, no takedowns against somebody who threw 48 strikes with no takedowns. So it wasn't like he came in and, like, lit somebody up or came in and took him down 8 times. So to me, give me the guy who's been through the meat grinder of the Bellator, LFA, 2 fights in the UFC. He can wrestle, and he's got 9 knockouts versus the guy who only has 3 knockouts against 1 and 2 fighters.
Exactly. And as a fellow Canadian myself, our regional scene up here is not the strongest. So to beat a minus 300 Canadian prospect, let's not put too much stock into that. All right. Let's move on to the next fight here. We're going to be looking at, excuse me, we got Seung-Woo Choi going up against Joshua Culibao. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus 235 on Seung-Woo Choi and plus 190 the return on Joshua Culibao. Very intriguing fight here. I'm a fan of Seung-Woo Choi. I love his striking style. Very rangy, very tall for this division. And when he's able to settle into that rangy striking style and get into his groove, it's very difficult to stop him, right? The guy has great combination, great head kicks, has some solid power as well, stinging power, if that's what you want to call it, and does a really good job in just, exactly, and just staying on the outside and just battering his opponents. Culibao likes to brawl, right? That's what he's hoping that this fight's going to turn into, is a fight where he can get Seung-Woo Choi to stay in the pocket and exchange some big shots with him. That's where Culibao will likely thrive. Another way that he could thrive is likely taking this fight to the ground, but usually, more often than not, that's not really his style. He likes to go out there, he likes to swing that leather and try to knock his opponents out. I think he's going to struggle to do that here against Choi. I get why Choi is a big favorite. I'm getting away from, parlaying those minus 200 favorites and all that. But if I were to throw a parlay together, I think Choi would likely be a part of that here. I do think he is the better fighter, better striker. And, if Culibao's chin wasn't made of granite, I think he'd be able to knock him out here. But I think he's going to style on him for the majority of 15 minutes and win this fight by decision. That prop currently sits at plus 175. But yeah, I like some Choi here. I think this goes the distance, which is minus 120, but Choi straight up, I think that's the spot. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I'm pretty much exactly like you said. If I do bet this fight, it will be Choi as a parlay piece. I'm not really high on Culibao, although, he fought good against Charles Jourdain. I mean, he got knocked out against Jalen Turner. And then on the other hand, Choi's losses in the UFC have been submissions, right? So is Culibao going to come out here and submit him now? So you're probably going to see like a kickboxing type fight with more of a power-based Culibao. And to me, like Choi fights long, in my opinion, which is good for him. And only losing with the submissions. I mean, Gavin Tucker, no shame. I mean, he went the distance with Evloev, who we respect the hell out of too. So if he went the distance with Evloev, I mean, he's fought the grapplers. He's gotten submitted. I mean, I have the same lean. I lean Choi as a parlay piece. Not going out of my way to bet it. And as far as DraftKings, the same thing. Culibao would be one of those fighters you put in like the high, variance, knockout, GPP lineups, really. I don't see him winning, a decision, 8 out of 10 times. I would lean, Choi winning the 6, let's call it out of 10 over Culibao. And I would see Culibao maybe getting a knockout in 2 of the 10, maybe 3, so that would land me on the Choi side. But I think the line's fair in this fight. Not going out of my way to bet it, but the official pick is Choi.
I love it. I love it. All right. Nice and efficient on that breakdown here. Let's get to the main card. But before we do, shout out to the 100 live viewers that we currently have. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe and show my guy Mike some love as well. I have his Twitter account linked in the description below at AMA Fight Club. Make sure you guys go check him out there. And then I'll give him an opportunity on the back end of the show to let you guys know everything else he's involved with, because this man is absolutely killing it in the game. And if him being in first place in my lock that I challenge high stakes game is not enough for to sell you that he's a sharp ass motherfucker, I'm sure you guys will find out by the end of the show how sharp he actually is. All right, let us move on to the main card here. And we touched upon this at the top of the show, Mike. Jack Della Maddalena going up against Ramazan Emeev. We got minus 155 on Maddalena and plus 135 on Ramazan Emeev. I'll let you kick this one off, Mike. Do you think that Jack is the real deal? Do you think he'll actually get it done over his toughest test to date?
I do, and I have a bet on it already. So I already
shit!
That was my other bet that I gave on the Stay Cashin show. So I laid the 155. I bet on Della Maddalena for a lot of the reasons that I touched on. I mean, before we get to skill set, okay, and we break down the fight, again, it gets to the business of UFC. UFC is a huge business, man. This is a pay-per-view card. There's only 8 per year. Those 5 slots on a pay-per-view card are prime real estate. Fighters kill each other to get points on pay-per-views and different things. The main event on a pay-per-view is always a title fight, right? The only time ever in history it wasn't was, Nate versus Masvidal, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think that was it. But other than that, those spots, co-main event, they're taken. But then the next best spot is that opening fight. So again, when I think that everybody's in their war room at the UFC and they're looking at the board, from the business end, right off the bat, like I mentioned earlier, I just don't think that they're going to say, well, you know what? Let's look at this whole card. And I got a guy coming off 7 decisions, including 2 split decisions and a loss. But I want to give him the most prime real estate on the card. I would think that that's reserved for the Maddalena side, right? And yeah, Emeev is a tough test and he's a good grappler, good record and whatnot. But also look at this age difference. You have Maddalena's 10 years younger. And even though Emeev is cut from that cloth of that smothering Dagestani, Russian grappling type, he's on the lower rung of the ladder, right? He's not Khabib, he's not Islam, and he's capable at doing it. But you lost to Danny Roberts, and no offense or disrespect to Danny Roberts. You lost to Danny Roberts. And before that, you barely beat David Zawada. And before that, you went the distance with Nicholas Stolze. You know what I mean? And before that, you lost to Anthony Rocco Martin, who I like and respect, right? So if you lost to Martin and Roberts, you win a split decision to Zawada, and you allow Nicholas Stolze to take you to distance, hey, man, pump the brakes for me there. And now let me look at the other side. I got Maddalena, 25 years old, from a hot region the UFC is trying to develop. He's 11-2 with 10 wins inside the distance, including 9 by knockout. And hey, when he loses, he gets stopped. So is Emeev going to come in here and wrestle fuck him, or is he going to come here and like submit him or knock him out? And so I think it's a great matchup for Maddalena. So now you get into the intangibles of it. Maddalena's got fast hands, good boxing. And yeah, he hasn't probably been tested with that smothering grappling of Emeev yet. But at the end of the day, is Emeev going to be able to do that to Maddalena for 3 full rounds without Maddalena, digging underhooks, getting out, spinning them, and getting back to his game? Or is he going to get taken down and controlled by Emeev, who's not, Brawley Estima on the ground, for 15 minutes? I just think that Maddalena is going to do what he needs and wants to do prior than Emeev doing it over the course of 15 minutes. And I think the line is very fair at -155. So I already bet it. I have a bet on Maddalena here.
I will likely be against you here. I'm going to go with the
Let's
Russians
go.
here. Now
I'm wrong. The beauty of the show.
No, yeah, exactly. You lay out great points for Jack Della Maddalena, right? Like if this is his fight, he likely keeps it standing. He likes to outpoints Ramazan Emeev, who, that's kind of been the bane of his existence in the UFC is he always fights very close to the level of his competition, but he always manages to edge it out. And the reason I gave the air quotes that he lost to Danny Roberts, I thought he won that fight, but again, he does no favors for himself. Yeah, exactly. He does no favors for himself, though, by making fights as close as they are, which is why I feel more comfortable playing him as an underdog rather than a -200 favorite, which he normally is. In this spot, I do think that he will be able to get the wrestling going. I do think he'll be able to white blanket Jack Della Maddalena here, because if we go back and watch some of the tape in the regional scene for Jack, although he is undefeated, he goes out there and still manages to get taken down by lesser competition, manages to, struggle at times on the ground. But his go-to move for getting back up is that Kimura sweep. Either he uses it to threaten the actual submission, or he uses it to reverse position, or he uses it to get back to his feet. I don't know how much that's going to work on Ramazan Emeev over and over again if he finds himself on his back. Should this fight play out in the kickboxing round for 15 minutes, then yeah, I probably won't feel good about Ramazan Emeev here. As like we said, his output is not the greatest, but he does his best work when he's able to drown these guys. The Stolze fight, yeah, the Stolze is getting finished left, right, and center at this point in his career, but that's not Ramazan's game, right? Since he's coming to the UFC, he's been more of that wet blanket type. He's that guy that wants to drown you. He doesn't care about the Instagram followers. He doesn't care about, it doesn't even seem like he cares about getting a title shot anytime soon. He just wants to get the dub. He wants to get both of his paychecks when he leaves the arena that night. And I feel like here he'll be able to do that against the toughest test in Jack Della Maddalena. For me personally, it's tough to lay the chalk on a guy who's having the biggest test of his career at this moment in time. He might pass it with flying colors, but for me personally, go ahead, beat Pete Rodriguez. Go ahead, beat some of these guys on the Australian regional scene. You're getting a legitimate Russian guy here in Ramazan Emeev, who's proven that, he's a fringe top 20 guy in this division. Will Jack be able to surpass that? He might, but the route that he's currently taken to go through a guy like Ramazan Emeev might not be the route to get past that top 20. I believe Jack has tremendous potential, but I think stylistically speaking, this might not be the best for him. So I'm going to go Ramazan here. I think we get a classic Ramazan decision here, which I think is currently sitting around +200 or +250. Might as well even bet that if you want, but I don't like getting that greedy, especially with underdogs. I might as well just take the money line here on Ramazan in case he does manage to sneak some sort of submission or something if he is able to get him on the ground. So yeah, give me Ramazan, the wet blanket Emeev. That's what I'm expecting.
I like it. We're a couple against each other on a couple things. I agree with everything that you're saying. Obviously, like I said about being the toughest test, but then again, when you're playing a game, you give, get, and whatnot. And I can't get over the fact that this would be the opening fight on the UFC pay-per-view. I mean, I'm sorry. What did the UFC just wake up and all of a sudden say, I'm going to decide to promote the wet blanket Emeev?
That's the thing, though. That's the thing, Mike. That's
this is a businessman, Preet.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that.
Who's he train with?
Yep.
Who do they want to build up? What market do they want to penetrate next? Like all these things go into it, and I'm having a hard time just thinking that they're going to put this fight there unless, again, who's his manager? Who's he train with?
This is where I'm going to – this is my rebuttal here. Mike, you've been around the game long enough, and you might have even had this with a couple of your fighters. Sometimes when they have a prospect on their hand they think is a legit guy and they want to build up, they send him a list of names, right? They don't just give you one name. They send a list and say,
it depends on who's calling you, because I dealt with Joe Silva predominantly, and then and Mick Maynard is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
But I've never had a fighter that I booked through him, but it depends on the style of who you're talking to on the other end. And sometimes the call comes back in my day from Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta when you're talking about main events, different types of things. So
for me personally,
I don't know that. who's booking that? And I want to add one more thing, but go ahead.
Yeah, the experience that I've had is Elias Theodore used to fight out of the gym that I used to work at, and they would always send him a list of names and be like, "Who do you want to fight?" And then me and the coach and the rest of his coaching staff and all that would go through the names and be like, "Okay, this is the best stylistic matchup for him. Let's go with this one." I think Bruno Santos was the guy that we ended up leaning on one of the fights. But either way, it's one thing to get that list of names and pick that opponent.
Yeah.
It's another thing to actually go out there and do it. You know what I mean?
And the cage and fight for him, like we said earlier.
Yeah, exactly. They can't fight for him inside the cage. Well, Carlos Ulberg is another guy that comes to mind, right? They handpicked Kennedy Nzechukwu for him that night. And then Nzechukwu said, "Nah, dog, I'm not going to just be a stepping stone for you to make your name off me." And, being Israel Adesanya's cornerman, that's not going to cut it. So now it comes down to Jack actually getting inside that cage and proving people wrong that he should be the favorite in this fight. I'm not sold yet. I will likely go on the Ramazan. Go ahead. Hit me.
You mentioned earlier, right, about some things that were previously in Maddalena's career prior to the UFC. Well, let's also factor in that's when he was 19 and 20 years old, right? So he's only 25 right now. So those fights from 2016, 2017, he's 19 and 20. And one thing that
improvements can be had for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I know from working with fighters too, the older you get, right? And I know the expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? But that guy that comes in limping that is going to just get his hands on you and use like a pick ankle, and he's going to do it 9 times out of 10, and it's just what he's good at. The flip side to that is when you get these kids that come in, like I had Mickey Gall come to me 0-0, right? And I'm throwing them in with Dan Miller and all the killers. I had Dylan Dennis come to me at 16. He couldn't even do a push-up. We used to laugh about it, but like I'm saying, like they develop and compound so fast. So the leaps and bounds that, like, let's say a Dylan Dennis made in my gym, I'll never forget the first time he submitted me. And I'm like, oh my God, fuck. It's over. This guy's becoming a man now, and he's going to be amazing in grappling, and you can just see it. That compounds so fast. So how different is a Jack Della Maddalena from 19 to 25? How different is he from, 21 to 25, or even the fact of Maddalena prior to fighting a Pete Rodriguez, or even getting a win against Lusa on the Contender Series? I mean, he's making leaps and bounds. And in my narrative or scenario I'm creating, Emeev is the guy that comes limping in, that's going to do his move that he's going to do and get you down, right? So I'm going to bet on the younger, more athletic fighter who's improving in that scenario versus the Emeev, who's not a world beater. And I'm going to end with one more question because I'm having a hard time remembering. I know I lost money on Emeev because I had him against Roberts, and I thought he won the fight, like you're saying. But what, in your opinion, if you have a better recollection of that fight, why didn't he win that fight then, right? And will Maddalena have those same attributes to present as Danny Roberts, who I don't think is a world beater, who has 6 losses?
It was, I believe, the damage per se that Danny Roberts was likely landing on the feet that outweighed the grappling success that Ramazan was having that night. And Jack could absolutely go that route and do that too, right? But this is also a numbers game at the end of the day, right? You're giving me a somewhat proven guy with a very good wrestling game at plus money against a guy that's still, he might be the shit. He might be the next big thing, but we just don't have those answered or those questions answered yet against a legitimate opponent. In my opinion, Ramazan is the first legitimate opponent he's going up against. It's tough to lay for me personally. You might see something that I don't. So, credit to you for being able to get the confidence to pull the trigger at chalk. For me, I just can't get there myself.
I'm with you. You know what I mean? And like I said, that's great to be on the show and hearing opposite sides. And of course, I'm not right every fight. If I was right every fight,
exactly.
I'd be a gazillionaire. But also, one last thing on this fight too. Hold on one second. I just had
go for it.
Yeah, and I lost my thought. The volume. It must have slipped my mind, but I had something to add, and I didn't want to cut you off, and I lost it. But if it comes back to me, I'll bring it back up.
Yeah, don't worry. If it does come back to you in the next fight, we'll definitely swing back to it. No problems. All right, let us move on to the next fight, which is the fight that was previously on the prelims. Now it is a welterweight fight in the main card. We got another similar situation here. We got the UFC veteran Jake Matthews now going up against Andre Fialho. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 145 for Fialho and plus 125 the return on Jake Matthews. I believe it is your turn to kick it off now, if I'm not mistaken. So please do let me know what are your thoughts.
I thought of what I was going to say too.
Go for it. Say it.
It can't be ignored. You look, when you're betting fights or looking at it, you take a lot of information into account, right? And not one is like, in my opinion, outweighing another greatly. So it's just a piece of the recipe, but something of note is that Della Maddalena, is the line that when the lines come out initially and the sharps, you generally bet early, or, not to say that they're always right or wrong and they're not better than me, or maybe I'm not one of them or whatever it is. And I'm often against them, but this line has got steamed more than any other line that came out. And someone saw some value in that. Now, whether that's a professional bettor, a teammate, a coach, or whoever the hell knows, it's just something to note the craziness that this line went from.
It flipped.
Emeev, I think, opened at like 150, 160, and now Maddalena's 155, 160 and climbing. So just to make note of that, okay?
No, great point. Great point.
And into this fight here, this is an interesting fight. This is a fight that I'm very interested to see. I like a couple things that are going here, right? Matthews got outclassed by Sean Brady, but I know Sean Brady. Sean Brady fought when I was an owner at Cage Fury. I've seen Sean Brady fight his entire career, and I always knew how good he was. And him training with Daniel Gracie and that whole team, and I would hear like the Pat Sabatinis, Paul Felders, people tell me like, this kid is so strong for his size, and he uses this one arm guillotine, and like I've been hearing it for years, so I wasn't surprised by the Brady win, right? But I was surprised how much he kicked the shit out of Jake Matthews, who I respect. And I think Jake Matthews is pretty much good everywhere. And I thought that would be a really hard test for Sean, because I thought that Matthews would be able to hold his own on the ground with Sean. And Sean just like literally outclassed him on the ground. Here is interesting too, because Fialho obviously, you talked earlier about striker versus grappler, and Matthews is decent on the feet too, but I would say he falls into the grappler side in this, with Fialho being a striker, right? And I don't know what to make of it. I mean, the way that I look at this is I see either Fialho getting a knockout or maybe even improving on the ground, or I like a hot fighter. Somebody just wins and fights consistently. A lot of momentum in this game and mentally, and everything goes along with it. So I like that edge on the Fialho side. But then I do like the edge on the Matthews side with the grappling. So something that jumped out at me was like the Matthews submission props were like plus 900, plus 1,000, plus 800, depending on where you see it. So now if you play the fight out, I think it would be pretty wise for Jake Matthews, if I'm his coach, saying, all right, Jake, I respect your striking, but let's keep a real high guard. Let's touch with the jab, fake something and get in on this guy. Like if the coach isn't telling him that and he's saying to him, well, come out and let's have a power striking contest against Andre Fialho, he needs to get a new coach, right? So now it gets into you can't get in the cage and fight for him. So if you play out the most likely scenarios, it leads to like Fialho by knockout and or decision, right? I don't think he's going to submit, Jake Matthews, but then it gets to like Jake Matthews trying to initiate the grappling. So that would lead to a lot of things. It could lead to frustration from Fialho, where the fighter like looks at the ref like, oh, let me up, like, begging, right? If Matthews is backpacking him or taking his back. And then it leads to what are the results? Can he pound them out for a TKO or can he submit them? So to me, I think that there's a ton of value on Jake Matthews by submission at. I mean, I don't know what you're looking at, but DraftKings here had plus 900. So if I was to like bet anything, I would probably maybe look at that, Matthews by submission, or Matthews with like a double chance, which is the 2 out of 3 outcomes, like Matthews by submission or decision, depending on what that value is, right? But I have a hard time seeing Fialho winning via submission, and I have a hard time seeing him win a decision. So if we like the Fialho side, you almost have to play like the knockout. But I don't have a bet on it yet. I initially wanted to bet Matthews, like almost like a no-brainer, especially when I saw the line. But I like a hot fighter, like I say, and I like the look that Fialho had at weigh-ins. I like the look of him training with his team and riding that hot streak. So as of now, no official bet. I'm going to hear what you say, and I know you want an official bet for each side, and I'll give it.
Official prediction, not just a bet. Yeah. Like I'm not forcing bets on this show.
It's more so just prediction is going to land on the Matthews side because, again, I always favor, not always, but most times the grappler over the striker. And I think Matthews has been through enough experience in the UFC to know what it takes to win this fight. And I think he's going to be uber focused coming off that loss, which snapped his 3-fight winning streak. And when it does go to the ground, it's not going to be Sean Brady. It'll be Fialho. So I would put my bet on Matthews to get the fight where he needs it, thus leading to the bet on Matthews.
I am all in on Jake Matthews here. Like this is I think, like, I personally right now I have 2 units on him at plus 140. I pulled out last week, early last week when I saw the line at plus 140. Now it's still around that plus 120, plus 125 range. I'm thinking of adding even more money to it, man. Like I don't think I can't remember the last time I've been this confident on an underdog because we're getting a little bit of a concoction here of recency bias on Andre Fialho, in my opinion. He's on a, like you're saying, he's on a bit of a heater right now because he's staying active. He's telling Dana White he wants to fight on every single pay-per-view. He's been doing that for the last couple of pay-per-views now, and he's getting these impressive knockouts, most notably the knockout victory over Miguel Baeza. That's a big win for him. But one thing we have to recognize with Baeza, man, that guy's chin is just done so at this point in time in his career, which is sad to say because I thought that kid had a bright future inside the UFC. I thought that guy was a top 5 type of fighter. He has the striking, he has the jiu-jitsu. That chin and durability just could not withstand any of the power that he's going up against. And now you're getting a guy here in Jake Matthews who's ever only been TKO'd once in his career against Kevin Lee, and that was with a grappling heavy game plan. Most of the losses on Jake Matthews' record are coming from guys that have better grappling than him. He's never been outstruck by the better striker. He's been knocked down once in his UFC career, and that was earlier in his career against, I believe the kid's name was Akbar. Let me just quickly get the name here. Akbar Areola is the guy that he got knocked down against. And then he ended up finishing him with the doctor stoppage at the ending of round 2. Like, Jake Matthews was once that prospect. He's in the Jack Della Maddalena position right now, essentially, right? But essentially, it was 6 years prior for him because he was 19 years old when he made his UFC debut. He's been in the UFC since 2014. And he was a hot prospect back then. I remember time and time again, he'd always be the big favorite going into his fights. And now all of a sudden, he's the underdog to a guy that's on a 2-fight knockout winning streak. I don't get it. Like, the knockouts are, sometimes people overvalue the standing knockout chances of a fighter, right? When you get a guy that has the grappling advantage and can get the TKO on the ground, that weighs much more than a guy trying to find the bullseye on a moving target in the standing position. And I think that's the trouble that Andre Fialho is going to have here. I don't get how a knockout victory over Cameron Van Camp makes him the favorite here against a guy like Jake Matthews. Maybe the Miguel Baeza one. Okay, I get that. Baeza is a legitimate fighter, but we know his issues with his chin. Jake Matthews does not have a chin issue. Like I said, only ever been knocked down once in the UFC. He's going to have the grappling advantage here. He's finally filling out that 170-pound weight class as well. Like, he was a kid for the most of his UFC career. Now he's a man, 27 years old, very much filled it out, like I said. And I think he's going to be the much better grappler here. Like, even if you go back and look at the second last loss for Andre Fialho against Antonio Dos Santos Jr., bad look. Horrible gas tank in that fight. Could not keep up with the grappling that Dos Santos Jr. was putting on him there. And then eventually he loses that fight via decision. But if that was Jake Matthews in that position, I like the submission prop that you brought up, Mike. Plus 900 is egregious. Like, that is, it should be closer to plus 400 in my opinion, maybe even plus 300. But yeah, I love the submission prop in this fight. I love Jake Matthews. This might be the second time ever I'll have again, I'm very close to pulling the trigger. I have enough confidence in it. I might as well do it. This might be the second time ever that I have a lock of the night play that's at plus money. I love Jake Matthews that much. The only other time was way back when I had pennies for units. I had Ramazan Emeev against Sam Alvey as my lock of the night play at like plus 140 or something, I think it was. But now here, playing with legitimate money, plus 125 to finish out the money that I have on him here. I got to go with Jake Matthews. I absolutely love him in this spot. Let's go, Mike. I thought you'd see it. I thought you'd see it.
I got one more. Yeah, I mean, I do. I ended up on Matthews, right? Who was my pick, right? But you also have to factor in some other things. So Fialho has never been submitted, okay? And I know it depends on who he fought and whatnot. You know, Matthews is coming off the Brady loss, but even before that, he beat Diego Sanchez and he beat Emil Meek. You know, I mean, he also has to show me a little bit. He does have the experience, to your point, fighting since 2014, and he's been in there and he's been through everything again. But don't discount the hot fighter. I'm telling you, mentally, it's even more than anything of this guy who's at a great camp, right? He's training with killers every day, and he's got that knockout power. And Matthews, I mean, who do you think his best win ever was? I mean, who are you going to say? The Leech? I mean, who's his best ever win?
Hey, I would put Andre Fialho like lower on the list of guys that he's fought. I don't think that Fialho's
lower than Emil Meek. I mean,
Meek probably out grapples Fialho and wins that fight too.
I might punch the shit out of him. I might have to argue that. But also, I'm just saying to make aware of it. And here's one other thing too. I did say the submission prop, but something that I've got burned with in the past is getting too greedy. And Alonzo Menafield comes to mind, where I had him buy submission and he fucking got. Oh, excuse my
dude.
I don't know what
swear all you want. Swear all you want. It's my channel.
So and he got a submission. So if I am going to bet that, that like Matthews submission prop is like a fraction, but what's not that bad is that double chance, TKO, knockout, or sub plus 450 on DraftKings.
Ooh, that's not bad either.
If he gets his hooks in a Fialho and bellies him down and starts to rain down strikes, he's going to get a TKO instead of the submission. So I do like that. Now, if you think that Matthews is going to win, it obviously could be a decision, right?
Yeah.
But you also brought up a great point that Fialho has had cardio problems. So if he's in a bad position early round one, fighters tend to like get very frustrated also, right? And like make a bad decision, put both hands on the mat, get your neck taken. So if you really like the Matthews side, you also have to consider that double chance prop at plus 450, because plus 450, plus 500 is a lot more attractive, right? Than the plus 120, plus 140, unless you think he's going to only win a decision. So maybe even if you're on the Matthews side, looking at breaking it up like maybe 80-20 or 70, 30 or 70-20-10, right? But like 0.1 unit on by sub, 0.2 units inside the distance, and then 0.7 units on Matthews straight. It's a fun fight to get creative with if you like the Matthews side.
I absolutely love it. I think the vast majority of my stake will likely go on his money line and then just have those little bonuses for his props there. But I think the props are extremely they're mispriced in my opinion. They are mispriced. I think he finishes him late in this fight. Again,
don't sleep on Fialho.
I don't know, man. I just think that this is one of those spots that as guys like us, we need to tackle this. This is legit recency bias in my opinion. And Fialho, he has big knockout power, but nothing in Jake Matthews' career has suggested that he has a bad chin.
Email me. There's something to watch out for.
We'll see.
Diego Sanchez at the end of his career. He's got to show me. And I like Jake Matthews.
Yeah.
But perfect. I also like a hot fighter when knockout. Yeah.
Let's see. But yeah, in terms of predictions, me and Mike, obviously on the Jake Matthews side here, I'm likely going to have a big bet on. I already have money on him, but I'll continue to add to it now with my confidence even sky high. All right, let us move on to the next fight here. This is where the business really starts to pick up for a lot of people as they are very excited for the top three fights here. Let's talk about the rematch of a strawweight fight here between Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus 160 on Weili Zhang and plus 140 on Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I can't remember who started the last one because I got so fired up about Jake Matthews, but I'll kick this one off. I'll kick it off myself. So when I saw the odds for this one, I'm like, hey, like this is mispriced. This should be a pick 'em fight. We saw the last fight. Like it should be a pick 'em fight. There's a couple different things about this fight than the last one, though. This is a 3-rounder now. This is Joanna Jędrzejczyk coming off an extended layoff. This is, Weili Zhang. She had her crack at the title to try to get it back. She obviously lost her title as well, but the fight before that to Rose. Very close fight in the second fight against Rose. I could see an argument that Weili actually deserved the decision that night, but that doesn't matter anymore. This is the Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight. And I thought that there was going to be some value on Joanna here. She's a great striker. She puts numbers up. She throws in combinations. She makes it difficult for her opponents to catch up with the lead that she's able to make for herself early in fights. However, when you start watching that fight with Weili Zhang in the first couple rounds, you see the power of Weili Zhang be more impactful towards the judges rather than the 2, 3, 4 punch combinations that Joanna Jędrzejczyk is throwing out there. And I think ultimately that's what it's going to come down to. I don't know if it'll be as entertaining as the first fight. I don't know if Weili will look to initiate the grappling a little bit more than she did in the first fight. But even if this remains a 15-minute kickboxing fight, I think the 3-rounder more so favors Weili Zhang here because she can go out there and continue to throw her power shots. And with how effective she was and how accurate she was with those strikes in the first fight, got to believe she's going to be able to land those here as well. And she can land them as counters. She can land them as being the one that goes first. And I think she'll be able to touch Joanna and have more of that impact on the judges. Because, again, numbers and output are great, but who's the one getting their head snapped back more often than not? Who's the one, wearing it more than the other one? And I think it's Joanna who's going to be wearing more of the damage in this fight, which is why I end up on the Weili Zhang side here. I see her actually creeping up around -150 on certain spots. I haven't pulled the trigger yet. I've kind of been hesitant because I do feel like this will be a close fight, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the power shots, and I think that's going to be in favor of Weili Zhang here. So give me Weili. I might bet her, might just do like 1.5 units to win one, just to get that 1 unit of profit here. But I do think she should be favored. And I think this line at -150 is a little bit more accurate than what I previously thought, which would be a pick'em line. So yeah, give me Weili Zhang. What about yourself, Mike? Do you see the value on Joanna here, or do you agree with where the line is?
I agree with where the line is, and you covered a couple good things, and I'll expand on some other thoughts I had on this fight. So, yeah, okay. Double-edged sword. Okay, this is Joanna's first fight back since the Weili fight, right? So when I say double-edged sword, because sometimes it's good to take a mental break, sometimes it's good to take a physical break for your body. You have to listen to your body. Sometimes it hurts. Well, she listened to her body and got breast implants.
I was going to touch on that, but I'm like,
I have to, because I got to tell you, like, not knocking anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I love breast implants, but
no pun intended.
But sometimes also my head goes to fighters, right? Like when you're fighting, you have such a small window. Like you got to concentrate on being the best fighter. Like even some people that like peddle endorsements too much. Like I'm big on the business side too, and you got to make money. But look, you're fighting, man. You got to fight. You got to get to the gym. You got to spar, train, blah, blah, blah. Like I kind of saw that with Joanna, where she was dominating everybody, the stardom, right? Like it changed a little bit, where she started to like dress prettier and do different things. And, like, it may not look on the surface like a lot, but having cornered 50 UFC fights, I've seen it all. I've seen behind the scenes. I've had fighters that didn't want certain things. Believe me, it's just like little things that come to you. On the flip side, I said it's a double-edged sword. It could be good for Joanna that she took the time off for her body, off the loss, regained, trained, and got the competitive spirit back. But it also could be a detriment because we only have a 3-round fight now instead of a 5. It might take her longer to fire up those engines. I mean, you have sparring, you have hard sparring. There's different things you can do, but nothing really can duplicate a fight, with your heart and the fight or flight and getting punched in the nose. And like, it's different, right? So depending on Joanna on how fast she can get started. So all things considered, the first time that they fought, they were both firing on all cylinders, and it was a good close fight that, I did think that Weili won. Now you have one race car that's not really fired up and going yet, and a shortened track, with 3 rounds against a fighter they're familiar with who had 2 fights since and has more power and finishing ability and, in my opinion, holds the wrestling edge. So that leans me greatly so towards the Weili side, right? Especially for Weili, former champion, coming off 2 losses, even though they were both to Rose. So when I look at fights, like I said, you're never going to always get it right, but I just try to find more indicators or check marks in one column versus the other. And right now for me, I have way more check marks inside the Weili column than I do the Joanna column, who I love. I love Joanna champion. I love everything about her. But from this betting perspective, I just think it's going to be in a tough spot, to come back and take this in a 3-round. I really wish, and somebody brought it up to me earlier, that this was like a main event on another card and we got 5 rounds of Joanna and Weili again. I think it's an injustice to us as fans that this is a 3-round fight buried on a 5-fight, pay-per-view card from Singapore with 2 really good fights at the end of the fight. Like this fight should be, when they're all looking at their boards, like I mentioned earlier, hey, let's take this ESPN card, right? Or this ABC card, or even a fight night in a lower market and make it a 5-round main event. So I'm a little pissed, and I feel a little robbed that we're not getting another 5 rounds.
I know.
In a vacuum, 3-round fight, all things considered, I'm on Weili.
A part of me feels like it might have been Joanna's decision to make this a 3-round fight, right? Like I feel like there must have been conversation about this being a 5-rounder, but I don't think she wants to do the extra 2. Like, why should she, right? It's not a main event. It's not a title fight. I feel like she is dialing her career trajectory closer to IG model than it is to regaining the title. And I think you kind of alluded that to that as well.
I saw it too.
Yeah.
So too. Yeah.
And what did Weili Zhang do since that time? She cut her hair. She goes, "Let's fucking go." You know what I mean? She wants
even
to
said to Joanna the other day, "You're much prettier than me." Did you see that?
I didn't know. I actually didn't.
Joanna had like the
embedded
dress on, and she was doing like the whole thing. And there's one more thing I want to point out about this fight. I'm very big on energy. Okay, the way people handle themselves. What do they do with their hands when they face off? Well, how is their chest and their breathing? And I got to say, both of these fighters have very weird energy. The energy is off for both of them. Where Joanna used to be menacing and getting people's face and getting down and say you're going to eat their kids and soul like Mike Tyson. It almost looked manufactured. With Weili this time around. And for Weili, she had a lot of nervous energy, very awkward, looking around and touching and shaking and bowing. Like it was very awkward. The energy is very off.
I think it could do with also their first meeting, right? Like they know they have like a master class or a masterpiece to try to top from the first time that they met. So I'm interested to see how it looks.
They both got to focus on getting a win.
That's exactly. We know this, Mike, though. Whenever we have a rematch of a classic fight, it never really lives up, right? Like Shogun Hendo 1, it never really lived up to the second fight. The second fight never really lived up to the first one. I'm trying to think of other Bigfoot Silva and Mark Hunt.
You can see Weili's takedown here, and that striking war is gone, and maybe she grounds her out. But you're right, 100%.
Perfect. So official prediction from both of us, we're going to go Weili Zhang, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. All right, let us get to the co-main event here. We have the women's flyweight strap on the line. We got Valentina Shevchenko coming in as a -630 favorite, plus 450 the return on the Brazilian contender, Taila Santos. I'll let you kick this one off, Mike. Does Taila have a chance, or does the flyweight GOAT reign supreme once again?
Well, she definitely has a chance, right? There's always a chance, but I'll tell you, man, nothing I've seen from Valentina yet leads me to believe that like she's falling off. And I can't lie. I mean, I bet against her a couple of times thinking that like now is the time. Yeah, like I really did. And I know, a lot of people who I respect, they're saying, well, Santos is the one and, Santos with the wrestling and blah, blah, but Valentina's no slouch on the ground. I mean, she's good in the clinch. She's good with wrestling. I mean, she's kind of good everywhere. And, Taila Santos is good too, right? But, she submitted Joanne Wood. I mean, she beat Roxanne Modafferi, who was like the ghost of Roxanne Modafferi, right, at the end of her career. I mean, she couldn't finish Jillian Robertson. I mean, Robertson's a grappler. I mean, Molly Meatball McCann, she lost. I mean, we're going to bet on a girl that lost to Mara Romero Barella. I mean, just 4 fights ago against Valentina Shevchenko. Maybe she's getting better. She's 28, like I said earlier about, the compounding fighters, but I just haven't seen anything yet that's going to make me say, I don't know, Valentina isn't going to just do what she normally does. I mean, Lauren Murphy gave her a tough fight. Maybe that's the argument. I can't get on that Santos' side is a bet. I definitely don't want to lay 600 with Shevchenko. But it's like one of those situations where I think she's a little opposite, like we were talking about at the Fame. Like, I don't know if she's after it. I think she kind of just wants to be the best, So it's hard to get off that side. It's hard to find value to bet it, at 600. So I'll probably gain my exposure in DraftKings, like Valentina and a bunch of my lineups. She scores well in her wins. Maybe throw in a parlay. And it's funny, when I did the Maddalena bet, I said, what is it going to do if I put Valentina in at 600? So rather than laying 155 with Maddalena, if I was to include Valentina, it took it down to -122. So I was like, do I want to really add the risk of another fighter? No, right? It's being a sicko. So I wound up on the straight bet with Maddalena, but it shows you where my head was wanting to bet Shevchenko, right? Like trying to find a way. I just couldn't, because of the value. So I give me Valentina for the official pick, but hard to bet the fight.
Yeah, I think this is where like casinos and sportsbooks make most of the money is those like surefire spots, right? Where like there's a banana peel moment on like say Valentina Shevchenko tears her ACL or some shit, or if she actually legitimately loses, the guy that parlayed her with Jack Maddalena and got that -123, he's just kicking himself for even bothering adding that extra juice into that parlay. I don't think this is one of those spots where you can just blindly throw in Valentina Shevchenko, right? I think the only time I've done it during this run that she's on is the same card where Usman fought Masvidal, where I parlayed them to, where he fought Masvidal. I believe she was the co-main event that night against somebody else. And that's the only time I've ever parlayed her at heavy chalk because I thought it was a shoe. And I can't remember who it was, whether it was Chukagin, Lauren Murphy. I don't recall off the top of my head. But this is, in my opinion, this is her toughest test since Joanna and Jacek, like when she won the title way back at UFC 231. I think Taila Santos has the striking to remain somewhat competitive. I think Taila Santos has the strength and the takedowns and the control to control Valentina Shevchenko on the ground if it so happens to play out that way, right? The only chink in the armor that we've seen from Shevchenko since she's won the title is that second round against Jennifer Maia, where Maia was able to accrue almost 4.5 minutes of control time in that 5-minute round fight, right? Or that second round, I should say. Sorry. That's the only chink we've seen. And we're used to seeing her pretty active off her back, right? I was very surprised when she pulled off that armbar victory, I think it was, over Juliana Pena several years ago. Not a lot of people thought Shevchenko could win that way. I remember everybody labeling that as a grappler versus striker. And then once Pena got that takedown, they're like, all right, this is a wrap. And then out of nowhere, Shevchenko pulls out of the submission. I'm not sure where that Shevchenko was, though, when Jennifer Maia was able to grind her out for that second round. No idea. But luckily, she was able to turn it on again in rounds 3, 4, and 5, win that fight via decision. Taila Santos, she's controlled over 52% of her 5 UFC bouts. And what I mean is 33 minutes of control time accrued over those 5 fights. She's landed 12 takedowns, and she's been able to grind these opponents out. Now, I get it. Jillian Robertson likes to play off her back, thinks she's always going to get a submission, which is why she always ends up losing her fights. Roxanne Modafferi, the ghost of Roxanne Modafferi. But what can we say to Taila Santos to be like, oh, you've only beaten these girls? Well, yeah, I beat these girls. You put them in front of me. I beat them.
I got some stuff I could say.
I'll let you get to it, but like you beat her. That's all that matters. You got the dub. They put them in front of you. You got the win. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah, she's not getting the finishes, right? She only got the finish over Joanne Wood in her last fight, which was impressive, right? Just knocking her out. Beautiful finish. We don't normally see knockouts in women's MMA. If she can impose her strength, if she can impose her wrestling and use that against Valentina, she could be live here. My concern, and I've been going back and forth in terms of putting a half unit on Santos in the spot. My concern is, can she do it for 5 rounds? And if we both know this, Mike, grappling is the most grueling part of the MMA game. That is going to wear on your gas tank more than anything in the MMA game. So if she can't do that for 25 minutes, the chances and likelihood of Shevchenko finishing her in rounds 4 and 5 go extremely high if Taila Santos can't maintain that level of productivity early in this fight. So the pick is Shevchenko, without a doubt. I've been, going back and forth, playing ping pong in my head, whether I want to, kiss away 0.5 units that I never want to see again, or actually take the shot on Santos here, as I do think she is the toughest test. At this point in time in that division, she is the toughest test for Valentina Shevchenko. I just don't know if we can even call it a test or a pop quiz.
Why,
at this point in time.
Why? Why is she the toughest test? Why?
Who else is there that she hasn't already beaten?
Even forget who else isn't there per se, but why her? I mean, like, I just think that people are blowing her up. Like, I just can't. Man, sometimes things are simplified and we want to make them unsimplified, right? Like, used a lot of ifs, which is a big 2-letter word.
Of course.
But if she couldn't friggin' finish, I don't know, Meatball McCann and Roxanne Modafferi, what the hell makes you think she's going to come in and out kickbox Valentina or out grapple her when she only has 3 submission victories? Like
for me, it's not
believe that that's going to happen.
For me, the result of a fight doesn't play too much into it. It's what she was able to do in that fight. She controlled those fights, and that's the aspect I think she should be able to win in this fight. If she gets that win, like if she has any success, it will likely come from out muscling and out strengthening Valentina Shevchenko on the ground. Go ahead.
All right, it's like we almost forgot because we're talking about what she's done since champion, blah, blah, blah. Let's rewind the tape to when she went up a weight class and fought Amanda Nunes twice. Arguably could have won one, if not both of the fights. And Amanda, bigger, stronger, better, in my opinion, everywhere than Taila Santos. And now she's going to get Santos in her own weight class. And I don't want to use it derogatorily, but she's like a poor man's version of an Amanda Nunes. And Valentina went up and competed with the greatest female fighter of all time. I mean, Amanda's very good on the ground, way better in my opinion than Santos, and Amanda's way better on the feet than Santos. So I just don't see like Santos, even though she's the #1 challenger and she did this to Modafferi and lost to Maria Romero Barella. But what would Amanda Nunes do to her? Or what would Shevchenko and Nunes do to Maro Romero Barella? Like, I mean, I just don't see it. I think that. I mean, now the more I'm talking about it, I'm getting more on Valentina.
You got to pay the chalk.
Like, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see how. I mean, somebody said earlier, well, she knocked out Joanna Wood. Well, Joanna Wood is now named Wood, not Calderon, because she's in love and got married. I mean, these little things that change the trajectory of a fighter. And Wood Calderon is at the end of her career. I mean, Valentina hasn't slowed down yet, really. I mean, Lauren Murphy landed 11 strikes in 4 rounds.
That's why I haven't played the bet on Santos yet. I'm like, should I really do it? Right? It's just, I feel like where she is strongest at is the only chink in the armor of Valentina that we've seen at this point in time, is that getting controlled by somebody from on top. And I think that Santos, that's the only thing she's really shown in her UFC career to this point that could potentially beat Valentina. Will she? Maybe not. Will she? And again, add in the extra 2 rounds, something she's never done in the past. That makes it even more murkier in terms of making a legitimate case for Santos. But again, prediction is Valentina. I'm not putting her in any parlays. Maybe if she was closer to minus 250, minus 300, I'd consider at that time. But at minus 600, it's unplayable. As our guy John Anik says, the prohibitive favorite. You know, it's illogical to parlay her at minus 600. If you see a prop that you like inside the distance via decision, that's probably the better way to go about it. But I just can't do it myself. The spot that I don't mind actually is the over 3.5. I know that's sitting around minus 160. I don't think Taila Santos is going to be easier to get out of there as her past couple of opponents have been, right? Lauren Murphy, Katlyn Chookagian, Jessica Andrade. She had, especially I see people talking about the Andrade fight, she was the much bigger fighter in that, right? Let's not forget, Jessica Andrade is a 115er. She was able to overpower her. She was able to outstrength her, and she got her into that crucifix and got her out of there. Can she do the same thing here to Taila Santos? I don't know. And will it happen within the first 3.5 rounds?
Weigh-ins too. You know, when I was talking earlier about energy, I mean, Santos looked a little shook too. She put on like the fake mean face, then offered.
I know exactly what you mean about the fake mean.
Yeah, I mean, like you know, some shit's manufactured and some real, and it's easy to see the difference between the two. Yeah. And again, I just don't see where Santos is going to dominate Shevchenko. You need to dominate Shevchenko in an area, and where you're making the argument over the oversizing or undersizing in that Andrade fight. But yeah, she took her down 7 times. I mean, Shevchenko saw the threat was on the feet, even to the littler fighter, took her down 7 times. I mean, she fought Amanda Nunes, like I said. I mean, she did. And like, let's dissect the fight, right? Because you said there's no time rush today per se, but let's really dissect it. Kickboxing only. Who wins the fight between Shevchenko and Santos?
Well, Shevchenko wins, but I don't think it's as much of a squash match as it has been in her past.
In a kickboxing match, she would wipe the floor with her.
Interesting. I think the power of Santos though could. I'm not saying that she's gonna beat her outright in that round
against Roxanne Modafferi. Man, Preet, there was 1 fight ago. I mean, like, where was it? Shouldn't she have knocked out Modafferi? She had this monstrous power.
But she managed to just outgrind her. She decided to use her power. Yeah, exactly.
That power. And where was Modafferi better, on the feet or on the ground? You would argue that Modafferi is better on the ground, right?
Better on the ground, and she outgrinded her out there.
Forward, you know, boxing style. But I don't know. I just don't see it yet. But it is a huge favorite, so I don't want to disparage it. But I just don't think that she's on Shevchenko's level.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes down. But prediction from both of us, Shevchenko. We are in agreement. So playing minus 600 is a little bit crazy, though. Correct?
Yes, and I haven't. Okay. I can't say that I won't arrive on it.
I'm talking you into it.
Parlays, so I mean, maybe I'll find a way. Maybe her, like, I don't know, Steve with Garcia earlier, right? Like,
there you go.
I don't know. What does that pay, Garcia? And
probably like minus 170 or something like that.
Let's see. Hold on, I have you. If I take Garcia minus 188, and I take
you'll probably get minus 150.
Yeah, it's minus 120. See, like, I don't know.
What? Really?
Here on FanDuel. Yeah, I mean. I don't know.
What are the odds on Shevchenko?
Minus 680 here and minus 188. Yeah.
How'd you get Maddalena from 155 to 120?
Minus 120. No, minus 120. Yeah. I don't know. That's actually a good question. Maybe the way maybe I did it on MGM or DraftKings where the lines are different, because some places have, you know, Shevchenko over 700, right?
Yeah.
Some have her 6 something. So it depends.
Yeah. All right. We've spent far too long on this fight. Let's move on to the next one, which I'm sure we can spend even more time on because it is a great fight. But before we get to the main event, shout out to the 130 live viewers that we currently have. Shout out to everybody watching this on a replay as well. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Drop a comment as well. Did we go too long on Shevchenko and Santos? Does Santos have any shot at all? Did I forget a reasoning as to why Santos should win this fight? Let us know in the comment section below. And then also make sure you guys go follow Mike as well.
Make sure you bet on Santos and that MMA Lock of the Night Hour.
There you go. You guys can follow him at AMA Fight Club on Twitter. The link to his Twitter page is in the description below. He's involved with a bunch of other things. Let's get through this main event first. Then we'll let him plug his stuff so you guys can follow him. Because as you guys can tell, he does his research, man. He does his homework, and he knows what the hell he's talking about. All right. Let us get to the main event here. Light heavyweight title on the line. We got Yuri Prochazka as the challenger coming in at minus 195, plus 165, the return on the champion. Old man Glover Teixeira getting it done at 42 years old, looking to defend his belt for the first time. I will kick this one off. Like we've been talking about since the beginning of this podcast, Mike, grappler versus striker. And that's obviously how we're going to be ending it off here. We all know the way to break down this fight. Prochazka needs to find that big finish on the feet. Otherwise, he can be taken down. He can be grinded out. And eventually, he will likely be finished if Glover can continue to have that top success. We've seen Yuri struggle with guys with grapple heavy game plans in the past and risen, and he's, found his way out of those spots and still managed to knock those guys out. The difference between the Brandon Halseys and the difference between the King Mo Lawals or even Carl Albrechtsen that he fought as well on Risen is they don't have the jiu-jitsu of Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira is crushing top pressure. The guy does very good in terms of staying very close to his opponents, so they don't really have anywhere to buck out, to shrimp out, to try to get out from under him. And then he does an even better job in terms of transitioning from one position to another. Full guard, half guard, side control, full mount. And then before you know it, his neck or his hand is around your neck and you're submitting to a rear naked choke. That's Glover Teixeira's game. He has some power in his hands as well, but I would not bet on him wanting to go out there and try to knock out Yuri Prochazka. He's going to be looking to dive on those legs as soon as he can make that happen. The one thing that we've seen over and over again during the 6-fight winning streak he's currently on, he always gets rocked, but he manages to get his hands around his opponents, drag them to the ground, and then drag them through hell, as he did to Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, and even last time to Jan Blachowicz. The spot that I like the most in this fight personally is the under 2.5. I know that's the alternate total right now. The widely available one is 1.5, but give me another 5 minutes, as I think within that amount of time, Yuri would have either found the chin of Glover Teixeira or Glover Teixeira would have gotten him down enough, managed to pass to dominant positions, and eventually gotten to finish himself. My prediction is going to be Yuri Prochazka, but I just can't play minus 200 on him at this point in time because the only way he's really winning this fight is if he finds that knockout. So you could even just play him by knockout, which is probably the best line that you're going to get on him here. Him to win by knockout currently sits at minus 150. So it's not even that big of a difference from the minus 200 you're going to be getting from playing him straight up in this spot. I like, I do think that Prochazka has the dynamic and striking power advantages here over the last couple guys that Glover has fought and beaten, which is why he should be able to find that chin and put him out here. But it's so hard to bang or bet a guy at minus 200 for him to just find that bullseye, find that target. We talked about it earlier in this fight. If you have that grappling advantage and you can get the TK on the ground, that's way more assuring than finding that chin on a moving target. And albeit it's a slow moving target with Glover Teixeira with the way he moves, but I think that Prochazka will eventually find that chin and put him out here. I just can't bet it myself. I would rather take the under 2.5. Last time I saw it was sitting around minus 190. I want to take that chalk rather than playing the money line here on Prochazka because I do think that Glover is just as live to get the finish. From a betting perspective, the value is all on Glover Teixeira here. He has way more ways to win this fight. It's just his lack of speed and diminishing durability, which is eventually going to crack on him. And I think that Prochazka is the guy that can eventually make it crack. So prediction is going to be Prochazka. Favorite bet, though, is violence here, under 2.5. If you don't have access to the alternate totals, I get the fight doesn't go to decision is very chalky at minus 500, minus 600. But I think that's one of the more, that's one of the more surefire spots here. You can throw it in with Steve Garcia, as my guy Mike was saying earlier, and probably get a better line on him. But I do like the under 2.5. Prediction is Prochazka, but my heart is with Glover Teixeira. What about you, Mike?
I think I agree with everything he said, really. I mean, best I could do is expand upon it. I think that the most likely outcome here is Prochazka. I can never say his name either.
Let's go with Yuri. Let's go with Yuri.
I think that the most likely outcome is Yuri by knockout. Like when I first saw this fight, sometimes I just like visualize like what's going to happen. Like I could see like the bell ringing, and I mean, I love Glover, and I really do. And even before Glover was in the UFC, I remember like he was from the Connecticut area, and I had multiple
Details.
fighters
Yeah, man.
what I'm saying that you got to see this Glover Teixeira guy. I can't think off the top of my head who it was, but like he trained with like a UFC champion, or he was the
Chuck Liddell.
Was it Chuck Liddell? Yeah, Liddell.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going way back. You're right. So there it was. So
he does that Chuck Liddell thing.
Yeah, like way back then, and I'm so happy he became champion because he's also a really good guy. He's a good person. One of my former fighters, Plinio Cruz, is like in his corner and trains with him, and Alex Poetan, Pereira. So like he's embedded with them, and Glover's 42, right? And the dynamics here, obviously, if you put him in a phone booth, I would favor Teixeira, right? Because he can get his hands on him. Teixeira is not really a D1 type offensive wrestler where he's going to come out and explode with power doubles. And Yuri, he's got weird, awkward movements, and he's long, fast, and explosive. And it just rewinds in my mind the Alexander Gustafsson fight and like what that body type was able to do to Glover. And then if you really look at his losses, even though Corey Anderson took Glover down 7 times, but he's still got that wide, rangy body. And then he's also been knocked out by Anthony Rumble Johnson, big, powerful, long striker.
What a knockout. I'm not sure if you remember that one, Mike.
And when I see Teixeira, I see obviously his grappling, top smothering game, good top old school pressure, but I don't see like that in between the wrestling where he's going to be able to catch the Prochazka who's darting around and he has the reach advantage and things are coming out of everywhere. And not to say it won't get to the ground and then it'll be a race to survive for Yuri, right? Versus the clock and how much time is left in the round. But ding, ding, fight starts, 5 minutes counting down. There's going to be a lot of dancing and moving over here and a lot of wanting to get the fight to the ground. And if that happens at 1 minute and 15 seconds and he's able to survive, the next round starts, right? And they're back here. So it leads me back to the Yuri side. And the more times I played out of my mind, I see Yuri winning via knockout. Teixeira also has poor head movement. He's just there to get hit. And I've seen it happen so many times, and I could just see Yuri coming out and just like lighting him up, like bah, 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 like combos and like hurting them and getting on top and just finishing them, right? So that's what I see more times than not. To me, there's not enough value in playing the Yuri by knockout prop. You mentioned 150. I see 125 on FanDuel here in New Jersey. And even at that, I don't think I'd rather lay the 125 and have one path to victory than lay the, even 200 or use it in a parlay, right? But I love the fight inside the distance. Hard to lay to 500. I might look at like fight to not start third round props or things like that to bring it down. But, without the line, I love the fight to finish inside the distance. So then if you do like a side, you have to play that fighter to win the double chance inside the distance or in one of those capacities, right? If you can find the value. But I'm on the Yuri side here. I think it's going to be new. It's going to start a new era. He's a new type of fighter. He lives that like Budo lifestyle with the bun and the swords, but he's about that life. And, don't let that age sleep on you, 42, 29, young and explosive versus hobbled and hurt, I don't know. Yuri for me.
I think the Yuri era is going to last as long as the Machida era, as Magomed Ankalaev is just treading around the corner right now. And I think that if he gets past Anthony Smith this summer, he will likely fight Prochazka next. And I just think
a lot of animals. What about that Jailton Almeida? Which
my him? Yeah, well, that guy apparently said he wants to stay up heavyweight now. That was his last fight.
He's an animal. Yeah, there's so many exciting fights.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad that we kind of see it the same way here. For some reason in my mind, I'm envisioning like Glover Teixeira trying to get the takedown up against the cage and just getting elbowed into oblivion and then eventually getting the finish like that. Like I can absolutely see that type of finish happening. Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spann, that type of finish. But yeah, violence is what both me and Mike are expecting here. And I think that's probably the best way to play this fight, just so it covers both finishing opportunities as well. All right.
Yeah, I want to add one last thing.
Yeah, go for it.
So sometimes I bet in unique ways, and I tell you, I get my money in on different things, whether it be DFS and whatnot. And one thing I like to do, like in my opinion, I don't think that Glover is gonna, win a decision. Like, I don't know. He could control him the whole way, but I like to sometimes throughout a card tie my open parlays to the main event, and then you have a hedging opportunity to come back.
Good point.
So if I tie Yuri, who's pretty favorable for parlay at that 200, that's a nice sweet spot. You could put that with the Steve Garcias, and now rather than laying the 188, you could take like 130, 140 or whatever it is, and just create value throughout the card and either come back at the end and either take your risk off the table, and you could play Teixeira, plus 180 and just take your risk off and free roll the bet, or you could even get cuter, maybe play Teixeira by submission plus 350 and keep a lot of the value there on the Yuri side. So the way that I am probably most likely going to go about this is that all those middle of the road fighters that we talked about, the Chois, the Garcias, rather than playing them straight and laying 215 or laying 180, I'm most likely going to tie them to parlays with Yuri and get plus EV out of it, and then wind up at the end of the night with like a ticket on Yuri, where if he wins the fight, I win X amount of money, and then I could just hedge into it and like carve into it and maybe even play like Teixeira sub in the first round plus like 1,800 and maybe only risk like 1 unit out of my 11 that I have riding or whatever it is. Or, like depending on, again, your risk assessment, you might just take all your risk right off the table to start the fight and then crack a beer and enjoy the night. And if Yuri wins, you win X amount of units. And if he loses, you break even, or you hedge to +1 on the other side, whatever it is. So the way I'm going to use this fight, and that's why I said I wanted to end off with this, is I don't see a way where he's not going to be in parlays with all those Chois and Garcias leading into it, just to create that plus EV value on those earlier fights.
I love hearing everybody's different approach to gambling and betting, whether it's parlays, DFS, or straight betting, parlay, whatever the hell it is. I love adding that extra wrinkle to my shows, especially for the fans and the viewers as well, who may not be privy to that type of style as well. So I appreciate you dropping that knowledge on them as well. All right, before we wrap up the show, the last thing I like to do is kind of the lock of the night play, or your most confident play on the card. I'll start it off, then I'll kick it on over to you, to Mike. It's a toss-up for me, honestly, between Jake Matthews and the under 2.5 in the Glover Teixeira and Yuri Prochazka fight. I haven't played the latter yet. I likely will still do that very shortly, but I might be adding to Jake Matthews, which I currently have 2 units on. I might look to add on to it because I've been only gaining confidence throughout the week, and I feel like I don't want to miss out on this opportunity of getting a very solid spot at plus money. I might have to add a couple of more units to it here to make it a lock of the night play for myself. Mike, what about you? What's your most confident play here?
Yeah, it's a tough card to have like that one that I feel very confident.
If you have a parlay, if you want to parlay as well, you're welcome to do that.
Bets that I actually bet already and that I gave on the Stay Cashing show, like I mentioned, are Maddalena -155, and then I played Na by submission +215. And I told everybody on the show, if you want to be a little less risk adverse, you could play her +115 and have the path of knockout and decision as well. It's hard for me to pick something other than those two that say like, hey, they're my favorite fight, bets. But I love the main event and inside the distance too. It's just, how do you get the value out of it? But I'm going to have to stick to my guns. And if I had to pick one and I had to pick it, it would be the Maddalena bet.
Is it safe to say that's what you're going to be submitting for the high stakes lock of the night
challenge?
No,
it's funny because I thought of that too coming into it, but I have a lot to choose from because there's a bunch of dogs that I like on this card. I think that, unfortunately, last time I had a bunch of dogs that I liked, and I even tweeted out like the dogs are barking or whatnot, like they went 0-4. So sometimes they're dogs for a reason. But like to me, like that Ramona Pascual at +145 feels disgusting, but I want to bet it. Or Nah +115 or +215. I want to bet it. Matthews, to your point, as a dog, I want to bet it. Like there's just a lot of that on this card. Malkoun +240. I don't know. Not Santos, but yeah.
Definitely not Santos.
Clever, though. I mean, why can't Clever come out and get?
No, you're right. You're right.
Win, and you're like, how the hell did I not bet him as an underdog? How many times did that happen? But I mean, it's not a lock of the night, but I would have to give you Maddalena as my one bet for now.
I love it. I love it. I even tweeted earlier this week, so maybe it might bite me in the ass. I believe 9 out of the 12 fights, or I guess now 9 out of the 11 underdogs on the upcoming card are live here. Not saying they're going to win, but they're live. They'll probably cover the price tag and more. So we'll see how that goes down. All right. On the back end here, Mike, please do plug everything and everywhere people can find you. I know you got plenty that you're involved with. Let the viewers know where they can find you.
Sure. Well, for all sports, including MMA, I have a company with my partner, Tommy G. And I do the UFC, obviously, but we have best in class for every sport, including NASCAR. We have college baseball going on right now, League of Legends, everything. It's called 4Deep, 4deepbets.com. It's the number 4 deep, DEEP, bets.com. And what I do for the UFC is I release what's called my betting blueprint. So I told you I go into it and try to get all my money in, whether it's through betting props, we play monkey knife fight, different types of things. And I wanted to offer it to all the listeners that are here exclusively in here for free for tomorrow. So if you go to freeufcbets.com, freeufcbets.com, put in your email. Tomorrow, we'll email you my betting blueprint. It's a fight-by-fight breakdown with every single way that I bet and played the card from a betting and DFS perspective. I send it to the subscribers about 3 hours before the event kicks off. I literally take that much time. I don't bet early in the week. I don't believe in closing line value, and that's, for another day. But I do release the plays late because that's when I actually bet them. Everything in there is what I bet, how I go about it. I write it up, a little blurb on, my thought process and why. And then for our members, we also do a live show in our Discord where I give a deeper breakdown on every fight in our voice chat. So if you want the betting blueprint for free, go to freeufcbets.com, put in your email. And of course, if you want to join, we have specials as low as $17 and you get every single sport, access to the Discord, etc. at 4deepbets.com. And follow me at AMA Fight Club on Twitter. I'm trying to be more active on Twitter. So hard to do it all. I don't know how you do it. You're on like 1,000 shows a week. You're creating content, graphics, running contests, grading them, getting married. I don't know. For me, it's hard to like tweet, bet this, that.
For me, Mike, it's never having to go back to a 9 to 5. That's my motivation.
Let's go.
I never want to be sitting back over there. I'm glad that I get to do my passion for a living, and it's all thanks to the viewers, people I provide content for. They're allowing me to do this, so I want to continue to offer them and give them the best betting advice they could possibly get, and then obviously introducing them to guys like yourself who can even take it to another level and give them a different perspective as well. So that's how I do it, Mike. That's how I stay active on social media and all that type of stuff. Mike, we got to do this more often, man. The chat is absolutely eating this up. They love our combination and our chemistry. I love the debates. I love the back and forth. I love the banter. We have great chemistry, like I said. So hopefully we can do this a little bit more often and people will definitely enjoy it.
Anytime, brother, anytime. And you're still the only show I've ever done outside of my own company, other than, MMA Junkie and, a couple times, but like a real breakdown show every fight. So far, you've been my exclusive go-to other than our members. So
I might have to sign you to my
always
channel.
A pleasure, brother. Thank you.
Perfect. I love it. All right. Appreciate everybody that checked out of the show live or on the replay. The least I ask you guys to do is just hit that like and subscribe below. If you're listening to this on iTunes, drop a review over there as well. Make sure you guys follow my guy Mike on everything that he just plugged, not to mention his Twitter page, which again is linked in the description below. You guys just got to click that and then click follow, and hopefully we'll get some more tweets out of Mike, and that will goad him into actually tweeting more as his follower count starts to go up. Again, Mike, appreciate the time, appreciate the analysis. We're closing up on 2 hours here, but for a big pay-per-view card, I'm very happy that we're able to get this in depth about it, and hopefully we can get some green into the pockets of the viewers and listeners. Good luck to everybody, and on the way out, I usually like to say war a certain fighter, and it seems like I got to go with this one, Mike. War Jake Matthews. Let's go. Let's get that recency bias narrative out of here. Let's get Jake Matthews back on the W column, and I think he does it in a big way. Hopefully he locks up that plus 900 via submission for us as well. Appreciate everybody. Good luck in your best round, and I'll see you guys tomorrow 1 p.m. Eastern for the Fight Day live chat, taking all last questions, comments, and concerns. Peace out, guys.